Hey everybody, welcome to this new video of Solaris Ray doing a video about the Worlds Universe. This video is going to be largely inspired by my previous playthrough, which was Utopia. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you to have a look. I will put a link in the description below or at the end of this video. But this video is going to be the 15 things that I learned from Utopia series that can help you increase your bonus income and more especially your resource income. So without any further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, let's get started. So the first trick that I learned is you can construct multiple resource bases at a specific scenery, right? So don't think that you can only construct one resource base at a specific location. I'm gonna try to find the location where I had dwarf a white star. I had multiple resource bases at that star. Here you go. So this is a neutron star, a neutron star. And I had something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 resource base in that location. And as you can see, there I had 260,000 people. There I had 500,000. There I had 180, 20. 120, etc. Right? So as you can see, this is 340. So you see, like, you can have multiple resource bases in a specific location. So don't feel that you have to, if you have one scenery location, that you have to construct one resource base. It will work as well if you construct multiple resource base. Now, the difference between having one resource base and multiple ones can be pretty variable. The reason why I constructed many is because I wanted to have multiple passenger ship going in the resource bases, and also I constructed the resource base so that I can have fighters and bombers, which is going to be in the next tip. But that allowed them to protect themselves. So if one get attacked, then the bombers will be out of all the resource base will be able to protect themselves. But the first trick that you can learn is like you can construct multiple resource bases and that will generate money independently. Now you need to outweigh, like, okay, what is the maintenance cost of those bases against the revenue that you're gonna have from it. But if they are fully fledged resource bases with a lot of capacity, then you can construct multiple resource base, and passenger ship are gonna come. They're gonna bring tourists. It's gonna generate income, and as I said, like it's a continuous source of income. But even if you have only one scenery site, it doesn't mean that you can only have one resource base. I found out that the more resource base I had, the more people were coming. Right? If I only had one resource base at a specific location, there were less tourists coming in that location. So that's the first tip that I can share with you. The second tip is to know all the elements that can be used to do sceneries, or that can be considered as sceneries. So I highly suggest that you go in the section dedicated for the game concept. So if you go in game concept, you extend it and you go in the section called tourism, you will see this is all the places where you can have resource bases, like ringed planets, black holes, neutron star, like the one that I just showed you, unusual gold or crystal asteroids as well. So don't harvest them. If you want to use them as sceneries, you can use them as sceneries. And planet with unusual ruins or ancient monuments, and colonies with wonders, right? So whenever you have one of those 6 categories there, or 6 elements, you can construct a resource base in those areas, and that will generate income, right? So you need to be aware of that. So neutron stars, black holes, ringed planets with monuments or runes, even colonies with wonders, right? All that can be used to construct resource base and to generate income. So that's the second trick. The third trick is I noticed that it's way better to have the resort bases at the edge of the empires. And as you can see in this playthrough, which is pretty funny, in blue is the sphere of influence of the game that I was playing. You can see that my empire is broken down between multiple empires, right? And this game have lasted for something like 145 years, right? So it was a pretty extensive game. But you can see that my domain or my sphere of influence have been broken into multiple parts. And the funny thing is, like, it allowed me to have my resort areas not be very too far from multiple empires. So the third trick that I would recommend is to construct your resort bases at the edge of your empires or close to points where it's in contact with multiple other empires, because then if you have good relationship with those empires, there will be tourists coming from those empires to your resort bases, right? So the best resort bases are the resort bases constructed at the point where it's close to multiple empires. If you do that, then there will be more people coming to the resort base, in my experience. If you have an empire like this one, for example, and you construct the resort base here or here, for example, yes, it's a scenery location, but it's going to be harder for the tourists from other empires to go to that location because they need to fly a fair amount of time in your territory. Which, you know, can be more or less problematic if they have good relationships with you, right? Normally, tourists will not come in your empire unless you have at least a neutral relationship. If you have a trade sanction relationship or you're at war, they will not come. But even if you don't have a trade sanction or a war, if you are neutral, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be comfortable having their ships flying in your domain. So try to make the resort bases as close as possible to the edge of your empire, so like that the tourists from other empires can come. And don't forget that the money that you earn for the resort bases is based on how many tourists are landing on the station, right? I think it's something like 2,000 credits. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like 2,000 credits per passenger. So the more passenger arrive on the resort base, the more money you will make. That's simple. So that's it for the third recommendation. So the fourth one is a little bit different, but it's still going to be handy. So sometimes, I don't know if if you're aware of that, but it's a little trick that I use in my game, and it helps me quite a lot. And it's fairly known, but just in case, one thing that I like doing is if the planet is maxed out, I like to put maxed out in terms of population. I like to put high tax on those planets. Why? Because if you put high tax on those planets, then the people will be incentivized to leave the planet to go in planet where the taxes are lower. So, for example, if you look here, this one is 50%. I think I constructed a colony ship in this one, but this one was maxed out as well. This one as well, I constructed a lot of construction ships, colony ships, but this one is maxed out, maxed out. This one as well was maxed out, the quality wasn't good. But you see, like everywhere that it was far from being maxed out, and this one I think I didn't adjust, but this one is a very poor quality one. But it has a very rare resource, that's why I took it. But every time that the population of a planet is low and I want them to grow, I put that at 0 tax, and the population of the planets that had the population maxed out, I put it high tax, I think like 45%, 50%, just to incentivize them to migrate to the planet that don't have a lot of people. And why I'm doing that is because I want to have the population continuing to grow. So if the people are not incentivized to leave the main colonies, they're not going to be able to reproduce because they're going to be capped on population. But if you increase the tax and entice them to leave to other planets that have lower tax rates, then those planets will continue to have their growth on population, and which will continue to spread the population of the empire through your different colonies. And this is very important for tourist income, because you're going to have tourist income from the other empires, but you're also going to have tourist income from your own population that wants to visit some special sceneries. So the more population you have, the more tourists you're going to have, right? So population and tourism are pretty intertwined. Of course, if you don't have a lot of population, but you have a good relationships with other empires, they can come in your resort base. But don't forget that the people from your empire they can be also tourists too, and therefore you want to have as much population as possible so you can have as much tourists as possible. So that is the fourth trick. The fifth trick is to ensure that the passenger ship has a very well updated design, right, all the time. So when you want to develop your bonus income economy, it's very important that you make sure that the passenger ships are having a pretty good range, right? So if you look at this ship, you have a range of 43.35 sectors, which is not bad, right? It has a pretty good hyperspeed too. And as you can see here, normally, yep, I have 10 commerce standard accommodation, which is pretty big, right? So this ship can carry the equivalent of, I don't know, like more than, don't quote me on that, I don't want to say something wrong, but quite extensive number of tourists, right? Like at least 100 or 200 K of tourists per ship. Easy. Which means that those ships can travel through long distances, they can travel fast, which is very critical when you have a resort base in the edge of the empires. You want to have people, if they want to move around, to be able to be picked up by those ships and to go into those spaces. And also please make sure that those ships have a minimum of defense, right? Recommend shield and a little bit of armor, because you don't want those ships to go down in 2 seconds. You want them to have the time to flee if they get attacked by pirates or whatever, because especially if they can carry a lot of passengers, if they are destroyed, all the people in those ships will be killed with the ship. So you want to give them speed, you want to give them range, you want to give them a fair amount of defense, and always make sure that they're up to date, right? Because one of the mistakes that I was doing a lot in Distant World Universe when I was starting, it wasn't to take care of those ships. And if I let it automated by the computer, that would take care of it fairly okay. But if you take control of those ships, you will be in control of how the population spread in your empire. If you have issues like resort base not having tourism coming, or if you have planets that are not having population, you just colonize them and you don't have population coming for a while, look at your passenger ship. Make sure that they have enough range to reach the ship. Make sure they're not getting destroyed by pirates or enemies on the way, and that will help you, right? The passenger ship is the blood flow of your empire. If they get destroyed, or if they are not up to par to keep up with the size of your empire, then the population is not going to be able to move around your empire, and that's going to hurt your resort economy. All right, so that's the fifth tip. The sixth tip is race for wonders. All right, so I did a big mistake in the playthrough that I did in Utopia. I'm not going to say too much to not spoil it if you want to watch it, but one of the things that I can say is I haven't raced, or I haven't focused on the wonders enough, and that was a big mistake in my playthrough, because I had another empire that was researching all the wonders, and after I realized, but wait a minute, the wonders, when you construct a wonder in a planet, that planet becomes a scenery point. So then you can construct resort bases around that planet to generate income. So what I wanted to do after on is to construct wonders in my different planets or the different colonies. So each of my main colonies were becoming resort bases. So there, if you can see, Utopia Prime was my main planet, right? And I constructed one wonder there, right? If I look in facility, this is not a wonder, but this is a wonder, right? If I remember, I don't think Ahmed facilities is a wonder. I could be wrong, but the holographic network was a wonder. All right. So I constructed in my prime planet, and my prime planet became a scenery, right? A scenery point. So therefore, I was able at the planet to construct multiple resort bases, right? And those resort bases were having tourists, essentially from my population, but also from others, right? And that generate income. So that's a good thing to know. And after what I did, which is pretty cool, is taking, for example, Gemini 3, which was one of my colonies, and I put on that colony, I put in that colony a wonder, and after that I put resort bases, and those resort bases, as you can see, had quite a few tourists, like 1,240,000 tourists. It's not too bad. This one, 620,000 tourists, is not too bad. If you time that by 2,000 per tourist, you see that's quite a significant amount of income, right? So that's another tip there. The sixth tip is use wonders to convert normal planets that don't have ancient ruins or things like that, or rings, into scenery points so you can construct resort bases. The seventh tip that I'm going to give you is that how the resource income works. So resort income is pretty viable income. So if you look there at resort income, that's where the tourist income is going to be shown. And this is just at one point, right? At the when the series ended. This is a very low bracket of the resort that I was, the amount that I was doing. But it was pretty fluctuating, right? Sometimes I had 10K, sometimes I had 44K, sometimes I had 100K, because it just depends on how many tourists were landing in a resort base and generating income. But the good thing with that, it's once you have enough resort base and you have enough sceneries all around, then that's going to continuously generate income in your empire. And it's an income that is, how can I say that? Generally, it outweighs pretty significantly the maintenance of your resort base, unless you do a resort base where we're pretty gigantic, which is what I did a little bit at the end of this series, but I don't want to spoil too much. But still, even though if you do big resort base and they have a maintenance cost, which is annual maintenance cost, generally you will pay it back with just 6 or 7 tourists coming into the station, right? So the more station you have, the more tourists comes, the more money you make, and it becomes an income that helps your empire on a regular base. And the happier the population is, and the more growth on the population, reproduction the population has, the more income you're going to generate from the resort income of your empire. Okay, so that is the 7th tip. The 8th tip is to use your characters. So a big thing that you need to know is ambassadors are critical, paramount for tourist income. Because, and this is one of my main ambassadors that I had during the series. And as you can see, she had 119 diplomacy, which is absolutely fantastic, and plus 30% interest income. So guess what? When I was putting that ambassador in an empire, if that empire was having good relationships with, and it was a pretty significant empire in terms of economy and population, then tourists will go from their empires and fly to my resort bases. And every time that those tourists come in my resort base, they generate 30% more income. So guess what? You generate 2,000 income per tourist, 30% increased. That, if I'm not mistaken, is 2,600 credit per tourist instead of 2,000, right? It's 600 credit per tourist that you make, right? This is huge. Plus, diplomacy is very important because the better relationship you have with the race, the more comfortable those people will be to fly to your empire. Generally, I didn't find out that I needed to have a mutual pact defense to have tourists from other empires coming. Generally, a free trade agreement suffice. You know, even no agreement at all will work as long as you're not at war or trade sanction. But I found that the better diplomacy you have with the planet, and the more comfortable, the more tourists will come from that empire. Also, make sure that when you put your diplomat, choose the right nation, choose the right empire. Because if you have a good relationship with an empire, and they are pretty powerful, but they are located here, when you are there, it's going to be very difficult for them. This is not even a good example because we have a branch there. But let's say, let's say you have a very good relationship with this empire, and they are pretty strong economically, etc. And you put your ambassador that give plus 30%, tourist income and a good diplomacy in there. Great, but it's gonna be very difficult for the passenger ship to fly all the way through the different territories, which they can be at war, having trade sanctions or whatever. To fly all the way to your base there is very difficult and very dangerous. So try to select empires that are in border, right, of your territory. Because if you have, for example, this territory, this empire, if I have a good relationship with them, they are strong economically, they have a good population, I put my diplomat there, then it's very easy for them to fly passenger ships in my territory. If I have resort bases here or there, it's very easy for them to fly there and generate income. So keep that in mind. Like, a very big part of the resort income is to position your resort base correctly in the right scenery. So now, as I said, like, if you have an empire like this and you have a very good scenery here, for example, then you can put resort bases here. But that means that generally the income generated by that resort base should be from internal passengers, like passengers coming from your empire. It's gonna be rare. It's gonna be more difficult for passengers of other empires to fly all the way from the different part of the galaxy to go here. Whereas if it's at the edge of your empire, where there's multiple empires that are close to it, it's going to be easier for them to go into the resort base. So keep that in mind. And with that in mind, choose the right empire to put your best diplomat, because I'm telling you, when you have a very good diplomat like that and you know how to use it properly, that can make a make or break in your economy, especially when you base it a lot on bonus income like me in this playthrough. Then you want to have economy from trade, you want to have economy from tourism as much as possible. And diplomats like this that give a bonus in trade income, that give a bonus in tourist income, that give a bonus in diplomacy, you need to put it in empires that will have a good economy, that are close to your borders. Now, close to your borders is more important if you want tourists to come to your resort base. But even for trading, right, it's going to be difficult to have trade income with an empire that is far away from your trading posts, right? So make sure that you put your best diplomats to the empires that's going to generate the most income, and that are the closest to your selling point, to your resource bases, because that's going to make a huge difference. So that is the 8th tip. The next tip, it's gonna be to have a good reputation, and a lot of trading will help the tourism with your empire. So one thing that is very important if you want to develop your resource income or your bonus income, is to have a very good reputation. If you have a bad reputation because you are at war, because you have invaded people, you bombarded planet, you didn't respect your mutual pact defense, whatever, or you have the ways of the darkness in government, whatnot, it doesn't matter. If you have a poor reputation, that's going to have a huge impact in your bonus income economy, because people don't want to trade with people that are not reliable and safe to trade with. So if you have a bad reputation, you're going to take a hit in your trading income. You're going to take a hit in your resource income, because tourists are not going to come see you if you have a bad reputation, rightfully so, right? So make sure that if you want to have a bonus income, you will need to have a good reputation. So use diplomats, use spy correctly. Be careful when you declare war to people or what you do, because generally if you have a poor reputation, you're gonna have difficulties with your bonus income. It doesn't mean that you will have no income or people will not come, but it's definitively gonna impact negatively your bonus income. So if you want to have a good and strong bonus income, make sure that you have a good and strong reputation. That is it for the 9th tip. The 10th tip is gonna be to use escorts and patrols correctly. So this is something that unfortunately I was not using at the beginning of the game when I was learning. I wasn't necessarily using the escort ships correctly, and even in that playthrough, I don't think I did a good job of using the escorts. But it's very important to have strong and reliable escorts all over your empire to protect your resource bases, but also to protect the passenger ship flying in your empire, and to protect also your mining bases, your trade stations. Is very important, because if you have pirates raiding you, if you have space monsters attacking you, if you have enemy empires raiding you or destroying your ships, that is going to impact your bonus income, because a big part of the bonus income is relying on moving populations from one point to another, but also resources from one point to another to the galaxy, right? Distant Worlds Univers is a very superb and complex game, which is pretty realistic in that regard. When, for example, you have mining stations, they're going to be spread all over the galaxy, right? Where you can have minerals at the edge of your empire, and then, how can I say that? It's not because you have access to resources within your empire, but the actual construction side that needs it is going to have access to it. So you're going to need to make sure that the freighters, for example, can transport the resources that is required from the point where they are stocked to the point that they are needed to do constructions. And that is a big job of the escorts. The escorts are there to fly within the empire and to destroy, small ships, small raids, creatures that can attack your ship, attack your construction ship, your passenger ship, your freighter ships, your resupplying ships. Generally, they don't have a lot of defenses, so you need escorts to defend them. So like that, the resources and the passengers can fly through your empire safely. And when that happens, then you will see that the bonus income will be better. Now, of course, if you look at my empire there in this playthrough, is broken in multiple shards, which made, of course, the circulation of resources, the circulations of passengers difficult. So yeah, it's very that's the good point of having a more uniform empire like this, then the passenger ship, the freighters, can fly safely from one point to another, whereas my empire had to go through empires that I didn't necessarily have the right to fly through, and that was creating tension with those empires, right? So make sure that you have escorts to defend your freighter ships, to defend your passenger ship, because if it gets destroyed in transit, then not only you lose the resources or the people that were transported, but also you're going to lose time, because those resources or those passengers will not arrive at destination, and the destination will not be able to be finalized, or the people will not be able to go at the resort base, that will not generate the income, or that will not be able to help constructing the sites and the ships that you need to be constructed. So it's very important to make sure that you have good, strong escort ships in your empire to help protect against the small raids and the monsters that can destroy your ships. All right, so that's it for that tip. So the 11th tip is gonna be something that I use. Now, some people like it, some people don't. Take it or leave it. That's up to you. But it's something that you need to understand about the game. Now, if I go in the economy, you will see there is the cash flow on hand, right? Or the cash on hand. There's the cash flow, and there is the bonus income, right? The bonus income is the sum of the spaceport income, the foreign trade bonus, and the resort income, whereas the cash flow is from the tax and the tributes of our empires minus the different expenses that you have. Now, something that you need to know is the pirates, when they make their offer, the proposal for protection, they base a big part of the fee for the protection on the cash flow. So if the cash flow, if you have a very strong cash flow, the pirates are not only gonna say like, well, we can protect you, but it's gonna be super expensive. And if you don't accept their protection, then they're gonna raid you. They're gonna attack you, right? So one thing that a lot of people tend to do, and me included, is instead of trying to have a strong cash flow, we try to have a strong bonus income, because the pirates don't seem to take the bonus income under consideration when they make their proposal for the protection per month, right? So if you have a pirate coming to you and you have a negative cash flow, even if you have a fair amount of money on hand, generally the request for credit per month is going to be lower. And what I was able to do therefore is to accept the different protection from the pirates. So that's going to be explained in a later tip, but please be mindful that a high cash flow means higher problem. You're gonna have more issues with the pirates if you have a high cash flow. If you have a low cash flow, then you're gonna have less issues with the pirates. And bonus incomes are not taken under consideration by the pirates when they make their proposal. So if you have a strong bonus income and a low cash flow, then you're gonna be able to pay, like I did here. If you look at the relationship I have with the pirates, a lot of them are pleased with me. Why? Because I had, protection arrangement with them for quite some time, right? And that can seem a lot, but I can tell you, this one is one of the most expensive, but most of them is 250 credit. As this one is more expensive. This one is 250 per month. And at this stage of the game, 150 years with 5 million, like having pirates proposing 250 per month for their protection is not bad, right? I even have one at 50, right? This is 180 per month, which is okay. And guess what? Once you have a strong economy, you can afford to pay this. And if you do, then they're going to be less troublesome. But anyway, the 11th tip is to understand that cash flow is used by the pirates to see if it's worthy to attack you. If you have a low cash flow and a strong bonus income, you will have less trouble. So thank you. That is for the 11th tip. The 12th tip is to buy if, okay, so that depends, okay, that's on you and your playstyle and what you want to do with your empire. But if you have a low cash flow and a high bonus income, then you can afford to buy protections from the pirates, which means that they're not going to raid you at all, or not as often. Like, it's only the pirates that don't have trade that don't have protection with you that will attack you. And in multiple instances, what happened in the playthrough is I had pirates defending me against other pirates, so I didn't need to have a huge fleet. I didn't need to have a huge amount of escorts or things like that, because I was protected by an entire armada of pirates. All right, so pirates were protecting me against pirates, so that's pretty cool. Now, the problem with this strategy is if you go with a more warrior kind of empire, then your bonus income is going to be lower, and therefore you're going to have a higher cash flow. So that means that the protection that's going to be requested from the pirates are going to be way higher, and you may not have the money to pay. So you're going to have to defend against the pirates, right? But that's the trade-off between having an empire that is more acts around tourism, diplomacy, discussion, diplomats like the Securians, or having a race that is more warrior-like and aggressive. I don't have an example in mind, but if you have an empire that is more warrior-like and more aggressive, then yeah, it's you're gonna have to rely more on your cash flow, because your bonus income is gonna be lower. You're gonna have to rely more on taxes, and that's gonna be more trouble, right? But if you can rely on your bonus income, then you can afford to have a low cash flow, because your bonus income is gonna be strong, and the pirates will leave you alone. And if you pay the pirates for their protections, then you, as I say, you will not need as much escorts, because you're not going to be attacked that often. That being said, be careful, because if you do that, if you are friends with a lot of pirates, some empires will not like you, right? They will not like you. So, and that's the problem that I had in this playthrough. A fair amount of people were not liking me. Now, I had a lot of people liking me, right? Like all the people in green, I had a free trade agreement with. So I was liked by a lot of empires, but there's a lot of empires that didn't like me. And I highly suspect it's because I was friends with a lot of pirates that were attacking them. All right, so keep that in mind. So that's for the 12th tip. The 13th tip, which is super important, is that you don't need protectorates or mutual pact defense to have tourist income coming in your empire. You don't even need a free trade agreement. Now, I personally prefer the free trade agreement, because if you have free trade agreement, then that means you're gonna have more trading income. So, and trading income, it's a very strong source of income. As you can see, the foreign trade bonus income was pretty nice, right, at that stage of the game. So that's the first thing. But be careful, because if you do mutual pact defense or protectorates, but especially mutual pact defenses, people will expect you, when they go at war, to go at war with them, right? So if you don't, that's gonna tremendously damage your reputation. That happened to me 1 or 2 times during that playthrough, and I didn't understand why my reputation was down the drain. And it was because I was having mutual pact defense with people. People were getting at war, and I didn't want to go at war with them, because I'm about diplomacy, not war, and they were not liking me. So I had to work my way up, amend for it, repair my reputation, and after I understood that free trade agreement is what you need if you want to stay neutral but still have economical relationship with people. And after that, what I realized is like people that I had free trade agreement with, that could be at war with other people or not, it didn't impact me, right? But if I had mutual pact defense, yes, I will have a little bit more income from the trade than the free trade agreement, But on the other hand, if I go at war, you need to go at war with them. And sometimes the people that I want to go at war with is an ally of you. And then you need to make a choice. Do I want to peace A or want to peace B? When in reality, you don't want to peace either of them. You just want to have a good relationship with both. So keep free trade agreement. Okay? If you are playing a race that is about trading and diplomacy, stay with the free trade agreement. It will avoid you a lot of problem and still get you most of the benefits for trading and tourism and developing your bonus income, right? So that is for the 13th tip. The 14th tip is to equip your resort bases with some kind of defense, such as shield, armor. But one of the best defense that I found there is bombers and fighters, because they have the possibility to cover a fair amount of distances, right? And they are pretty deadly if they're upgraded. And as you can see here, if you have multiple resort bases like this, and you have a pirate or an enemy nation attacking one resort base, then they become enemy, and then all those resource bases will come, deploy their bombers and attack the target. So the more resort base you have on a scenery, the more they protect themselves. And in this particular instance, you can see those resort bases were pretty big, 2053 in size, and I had quite a few, and I had a fair amount of fighters. But the reason being is like those resort bases could pay themselves, maintain themselves, and was a big source of my income. And I can tell you, if someone was coming in this area attacking one of my resort base, all the resort base were going like a nest that you piss off, and all the bombers were coming and with fighters to destroy the attacker. So that's the beauty of this. The beauty of this is like the more resort base you have in the scenery, the more money you make out of it, and the more protected it becomes. But you need to put some sort of defense, and as I said, like you can put torpedoes or missiles or things like that, but generally having bombers and fighters is better in my experience, because they can cover more range. So they can, even if this resort base is further away than this one can send his bomber and attack the attacker and come back. Whereas if it's torpedo, it's going to be limited in the range, so they will not be able to defend themselves, right? So that is the little trick that I learned there. The 14th trick is to put defenses in the resource base so they can protect themselves. All right, and let's talk about the 5th and last tip that I have for you in this video, is to be very careful where you build your resort bases. Because if you build the resort base, for example, let's say here, right? Or you build it here because not far away from your empire and you want it, then what's going to happen is you're going to construct a structure in the sphere of influence of someone else, which is going to piss them off. And it's going to slowly degrade the relationship with that empire, unless you specifically have an arrangement with them that allow you to exploit facilities in their empire. And that is not, unfortunately, something that I found a way to propose in a trade or in diplomacy. You can give the right to another empire to have it, but you cannot request it, apparently. Or I had difficulties finding out. Like, if you guys know how to do it, then please leave it in the comment section below, because I would be very curious on how to do it. I looked at all the diplomacy options that I could find. I didn't find it. But if you construct a resort base in someone else's territory, obviously it's going to piss someone out, so on and off. But there is also another thing that you're going to need to be careful, is that sometimes, and it's the case in this instance, I constructed a resort base here, but at the time that I constructed there, this was in my sphere of influence, right? And after that person took some colonies, and that resort base become in their sphere of influence. And then that slowly degraded their relationship with me, at the point that they were always pissed at me. So be careful. Try to defend against the sphere of influence. The sphere of influence is like a influence wall, right? I'm not even joking. So if, for example, you have located a very interesting spot for sceneries or resources, try to see if you can take a colony there. Take a colony around so that colony can spread your culture, spread your sphere of influence, and protect the points that you want to keep, so like that it doesn't become in the sphere of influence of another empire and to piss them off. Now, of course, you can always put a diplomat in that empire with good diplomacy to try to reduce the amount of damage that the relationship takes with that empire. I did that to some degree and it was fairly okay. But even if you send a diplomat there and it will try to smooth things out, if you have many structure in that that other empire that belongs to you in their sphere of influence, they're not gonna like it. It's gonna degrade, and you're gonna be at trade sanctions with them. You can go at war with them. They can attack your base, which happened in the series, etc. So that's something to keep in mind. Be careful where you construct your resort base, and also make sure that if you found a spot that is interesting for you, try to colonize a planet next to it. Even if it's not a good quality planet, it doesn't matter. What you need is to have a beacon to protect the area, just like there, like in some of those areas I had multiple planets colonized. So even if the sphere of influence was squashed by multiple empires, as you can see here, I had enough planets to protect the points that were important to me here, so it was still in my territory and people were not pissed off for me constructing things in those territories. All right, that's pretty important. And as well, a little bonus tip, which is still in the 15, but I'm gonna give in this video as well, is what I noticed when I was playing the playthrough is like it doesn't necessarily matter if you put two different diplomats, right? So if you put two diplomats in the same empire, is the one with the highest skill that will take over. So if, for example, I put Janesia and Ozu in the same empire, then the Ozu's diplomacy of 35 and Janesia's diplomacy of 119 will not stack. Is the one with the highest diplomacy will take over. Now, the thing that is that could be done is if, for example, you have a diplomat that has 119 diplomacy but -5 in counter in espionage, and you have another diplomat that has 13 in espionage, then it's gonna counteract, right? So globally, what I'm trying to say is like what I noticed is the end result of the diplomatical relation that you're gonna have with an empire is equal to the sum, right? Or if not the sum, is the employer, the character with the highest skill will have his skill take over, but people with negative skill will be counterbalanced with people with positive skill. So if you have a diplomat that is very good with diplomacy but very trash in counter-espionage, and you have someone that is not very good in diplomacy, like -5, but very good in counter-espionage, you can put them together in that empire and it will make you it will give you a strong diplomacy and a good counter-espionage, right? So once again, you need to have a good understanding on how to use your ambassadors to their full extent. And if you have the chance to have a very good diplomat like I had in this playthrough, like Janesia, she was with me since the beginning of the playthrough, and she was always in diplomacy. I put her always in diplomacy since the beginning. Then you cherish that character, use it to the full extent. She brought wonders to my empire. And even if you have characters that have negative traits, you can put them with other characters with positive traits. Just bear in mind, it will not sum, right? Like as I said, like someone with 100 in trade income and someone with 30 trade income will not do 130. It would be the 100 that will take over. But people with negative traits, with people of the same trait but positive, it will balance out. Okay, that's something very important to remember. And also something that I noticed, pretty interesting about the diplomat, is if you put a xenophobic, right, in an empire which is not, if you put a xenophobic in an empire which is not from his own race, his diplomacy will degrade and the relationship with that race will degrade. But if you do what I did, which is putting a diplomat of this race in the empire of the same race, so I put it in this race, so same race, then his diplomacy increased and the relationship that I had with that race got better and better. So xenophobic diplomats are not, bad diplomats. They just need to be put in the race that they belong, right? If you put them in the same race that they belong, then they can be quite good actually. But if you put them in another race and they're xenophobic, they're gonna be very bad. Okay, so just be mindful of that. And that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you learned one or two things about how to develop your bonus income in this World Universe. I really enjoy playing Utopia. If you haven't checked it out, please have a look. I will leave a clickable link in the video so you can check it out. And if you have any suggestions or any questions, put it in the comment section below. I will try to answer your questions about developing your bonus income. And if you have any suggestions as well on the next playthrough that you would like me to do, please let me know. I would love hearing what you have to say, and I will catch you on the next video. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.